Hi and welcome to yet another video. You're watching Geographical and we are in the fourth chapter of ancient history and we are going to start with the geographical settings. So how geography plays a very important role in history. So we go back to how India emerged. If you look back, India is a subcontinent which emerged as a separate geographical unit, right? It was 40 million years ago. So 40 million years ago, India emerged as a separate continent, subcontinent, right? And you can see that originally the parts of the southern supercontinent, you can see that is the southern supercontinent was called as the Gondwana land, right? It was the Gondwana land. So the Gondwana land and the northern supercontinent, that is the Laurasia, they formed a single land which was known as Pangaea, right? So it was the southern plus northern supercontinent and it was the Gondwana plus Laurasia is together was a single mass, land mass, and it was known as Pangaea. Now the tectonic movement started taking place and there were breakages, right? It started fragmenting this huge landmass, and slowly you can see that it started moving northwards, right? So India became a separate unit as it is mentioned here because of the tectonic movements. India then became a separate unit, fine, and it moved north to join the Eurasian continent 58 to 37 million years ago. Just like you can see, ये एक बड़ा सा landmass था in the first one. Here you can see it was a huge landmass. Then you can see it started getting fragmented, right, in Jurassic era, and then slowly you can see this is the present day, and it is still moving. So Himalayan boundary is very young. इतने सारे earthquakes हो रहे हैं आजकल. It is climate change. Is it because of these tectonic movements? So these all are in interlinkages, sub-interlinked hai. So we see that Himalayan boundaries are very young. And आज भी you can see the height of the Everest is growing or it is going up because there is movement. And this movement is somehow the reason for a lot of natural calamities taking place. And you can see that this uplift took place in four phases, right? Himalayan boundaries ka jo upliftment tha, it started taking place in four phases. It was during the Pleistocene epoch, right? So Himalayas formed the Indo-Gangetic plains through rivers, bringing alluvial deposits in Pleistocene epoch. So Indian subcontinent is as large as Europe without Russia. Please notice this. It is as large as Europe without Russia. But it is then divided into five countries, that is India. The subcontinent is divided into five countries. So it is India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan and Pakistan. And India has nearly 1 billion people, right? Which comprises 28 states and 9 union territories, including the national capital territory of Delhi. So some of its states are very large. They are even larger than the European countries. The population is really high. As you know that now we are almost heading towards being the most populous. So here you can see what way it started moving. So 71 million years पहले ये यहाँ पे था Indian landmass. धीरे धीरे you can see it has reached here near the Eurasian plate, right? So there is constant movement that we can see. So there are these four phases of Himalayan upliftment. We need to discuss these phases, and they all are through geological processes, and these geological processes are known as Himalayan orogeny. So the first phase is pre-collational phase, which is the early Eocene to middle Miocene, and this phase involved the formation of sedimentary bases. So you have to remember कि किस में क्या हुआ था, in which stage what happened. You have to just remember those things. So in the pre-collational phase, which is the early Eocene to middle Miocene age, early there was this formation of sedimentary basins, right? And the early stages of collisions between Indian and Eurasian plates. So pre-coalitional phase, collision of which phases? So it is the stage of collision between early phases of Indian and Eurasian plates. Moving on, we see the second phase, that is the coalitional phase. So this was the pre-coalitional phase. Then we move towards the coalitional phase, that is the late Miocene to Pliocene, right? And in this phase, we get to see that the Indian plates collided with the Eurasian plate. So initially, it was an early stage, right? Early stage of collision. But here we see that it actually collided. So this led to the formation of Himalayan mountains in and the Tibetan plateaus. So what led, if what I ask you, what led to the formation of Himalayan mountain ranges and Tibetan plateaus? It was the collision with the Eurasian plates, right? Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate. It led to the formation of Himalayas and the Tibetan plateaus, and it was in the collisional phase. So, pehle to pre-collisional phase, then it is collisional phase, then post-collisional phase. In post-collisional phase, you can see that it is the Pliocene to present, and in this phase, upliftment of Himalayas continued. So, in present phase, you can see it is still continuing, the height is growing, and the formation of the high peaks, while surrounding valleys were formed through erosion and sediments, right? So you can see that these valleys and all are formed because of erosion and sedimentation, right? So then you see that the ongoing phase is there, that is the present phase. It is very important. You have to have always a comparative view for easy and for a long lasting retention. Memory में आपको बहुत ज़्यादा ये help करेगा to have a comparative study, to have a pictorial uh, you know visionary thing. अगर आप एक diagram देखें तब आपको ये बहुत देर तक याद होता है than just reading the texts. So that is why we have tried to you know keep coming up with pictures so that you get a better hold of the subject. So in the ongoing phase, what we see that the ranges, the Himalayan mountain ranges are still uplifting, and there is growth of new peaks while the older peaks are weathering and getting eroded. So there are these four phases. Now what is the role of monsoon? So the Indian subcontinent is a geographical unit which is located mostly in the tropical zone. So India tropical zone में आता है, right? And we get significant amount of rainfall. We get very significant amount of rainfall. So the southwest monsoons lasts from June to October, right? Southwest monsoon lasts from June to October, and they bring the major part of the country gets the rain during these times. That is from June to October. In ancient times, we see that the rains were very crucial, right, for agriculture, particularly the kharif crops in North India. So पहले तो इतना बेहतर irrigation facility and all this artificial irrigation and everything was not there. So तब rain के ऊपर ही लोग depend करते थे for better agricultural produce. So the western disturbances brings rain to northern India in winters, right? What brings rain to western India in winters? It is the western disturbance. Northern India में winters में you get this rain, and with crops like the wheat, barley, which constitutes the main harvest, it is very beneficial. So rain is very important. Then we see that coastal areas of Tamil Nadu received the major rainfall, right? तमिलनाडु में मेजर रेनफॉल होता है फ्रॉम द नॉर्थ ईस्ट मानसून फ्रॉम मिड अक्टूबर टू मिड दिसंबर. So the discovery of monsoon enabled India to carry out trade and establish cultural contacts. Very true. We see that with Western Asia, the Mediterranean, and the Southeast Asia. You get to see that how monsoon played a very important role. It helped the traders, the winds, the rain. It all helped the traders. So the traders were able to sail. Traders were able to sail with the southwest monsoons from Western Asia and Mediterranean, and they returned with the northeast monsoon. So they went to different places when it was southwest monsoon because the wind was better, and they used to return back when it was a northeast monsoon. Here you can see. Here you can see the diagram. It is very helpful to understand. This is the northeast monsoon, right? Northeast monsoon. And then you can see the southwest monsoon, right? You have to remember the time period when you get this actually. So the northern boundaries are the next. So India is surrounded by the Himalayas on the north and seas on either side, right? You all know, we can see that there is water, है ना? And then you can see there's Himalayas here. So it is well protected. It provides like it acts like a barrier, as we all know. We have read it since class 6th that Himalayas acts as barrier. So the Himalayas protect the country against the cold Arctic winds from Siberia, and this results in relatively warm climate in North India. So the Himalayas are the barriers, as I told you, and they are also barriers. So however, the Suleiman mountain ranges in the northwest and the Hindu Kush in the West Province, they provide passage to the Central Asia and the West Asian people. So they are like a passage, and passage or these passes have facilitated a two-way traffic for trade, commerce, for the cross-cultural exchange between India and Central Asia in the ever since the prehistoric times. So various people from Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia have come to India as invaders, right? So people used to come to India as invaders and immigrants, and vice versa. So log they just kept traveling from one place to another, right? Just like you can see here, the Indo-Aryan invasion is there. Here you can see the Indo-Aryan invasion. So you can see that the valleys of Kashmir and Nepal, they all were surrounded by high mountains. The valleys of Kashmir develop its own life. Very true, they have their own life. So winter compelled some of the people to come down, right? Because it was so cold that due to the weather or the climate, you can say, people started coming to the plains, right, during winters. And summers attracted the shepherds from the plains. So the economic and cultural interaction between the plain and the valley started to continue. Because people, जब बहुत ठंड होने लगी, people started coming down. When it was summer, people started going up, right, to the mountains. So there was a economic and cultural interaction. Pamir Plateau did not prevent it from becoming a transmission center of Buddhism to Central Asia, right? So you can see there was this cross-cultural and economic interaction, which was, तो इसमें भी we can see कि geography का role बहुत important है, right? How rain is contributing, how winters are contributing, how the mountains and plateaus are contributing in formation of history. So the valley of Nepal is smaller and accessible through passes. Both Kashmir and Nepal they became the centers for cultivation of Sanskrit, and they both were very much like a repository of large number of Sanskrit manuscripts. So they were like the repository of Sanskrit manuscripts. Which two places? Kashmir and Nepal. The foothills of the Himalayas were easy to clear. That is true because it was plains, so it was easy to clear. So earliest agricultural settlements and trade routes were found in the foothills. Because it was easy to clear, so we can see कि earliest जो हम evidence हमें मिलता है regarding agriculture or trade routes, it was in the foothills of Himalayas and uplands due to easier river crossings. So जहाँ पे easily लोग settle कर पाए वहीं पे you will find that agriculture and trade flourished. And Kashmir and Nepal were the two places where there was cultivation of Sanskrit, and you find it is also called the repository of the manuscripts. Now, how river contributed to the geographical setting? The heart of historical India is definitely found nearby the rivers, right? So the different regions in India vary in terms of annual rainfall, and you can see that the Indus and the Western Gangetic regions have about 25 to 60 centimeter of rainfall and could be cleared and made fit for, and these lands can be made fit for cultivation with stone and copper implements because the land is so fertile. And again in mid Gangetic plain it could be cleared without iron implementation also. आपको iron के implements use ही नहीं करना है to clear the forest. It is that fertile. And the western region with less rainfall was utilized first for its natural resources, right? So they were basically people started spreading from west to east, right? Human settlement started settling from west to east. So the Indus Gangetic plains produced rich crops and supported various cultures. So the Indo-Gangetic plains were very much important for rich crops, and they also supported cultures. Indus and Western Gangetic plains were primarily wheat and barley producers. Middle and Lower Gangetic plains produced basically rice, and which became the staple diet. So you see how how these kind of crops started becoming a staple for few places. The Harappan culture originated in the Indus Valley, and you can see that the Vedic culture originated in the northwest frontier provinces and Punjab, and they flourished in the Western Gangetic basins. So the post-Vedic culture based on the use of iron thrived in the mid-Gangetic basin, right? And therefore you can see that it gained importance during the age of Guptas. The lower Gangetic valley was famous during the Guptas. The Brahmaputra valley covering Assam, it also gained importance during the medieval times. Then we see that the Ganga and Yamuna Doab, right? They were very powerful. They were the areas where people wanted to have their own authority and dominance because they were very fertile. So those who were very powerful, they always wanted and they always contested for these regions. So rivers served as important routes for commerce and communication. So what is the relevance or significance? The significance is that rivers acts as important routes for commerce and communication. Boats were used to transport people, so it was also used for transporting people and goods, right? Because it was very difficult to build roads during those days. You will basically find all kind of temples, the stones were so heavy that you will find, for example, Konark, you will find it was basically near the water bodies. And the reason being, it is very interesting if you notice these heavy stones, they were transported from one place to another through river, through waterways only. So some stone pillars built by Ashoka were transported by boats, fine, and rivers continued to be important for communication also until the East India Company started coming up with the railways, etc. Now, rivers provided fertile land and water to canals. but also caused heavy floods, right? So they kept destroying towns, villages, etc. And the ancient buildings were washed away. So important towns and capitals were situated on the river banks. And in pre-industrial times, you get to see that all these river banks were having, in they were the towns were mostly located in the riverbanks, and in modern times urban cities and are located at railway and road junctions. So there is a basic difference you can see. In the pre-industrial time, you find that the towns were situated basically on riverbanks and junctions, but in modern times you will find urban cities are located basically near the railways and road junctions, right, or in industrial or mining regions. So, how things are changing, and according to the geographical requirements and the geographical positioning, uh, or the change that takes place there, the civilization also keeps changing. So, here we see, because a lot of flood is taking place, and in some areas, in some places, there is no water, there is drought. So, you can see that either there is flood or there is drought. To prevent this, we are here with this interbasin water transfer links, right? So you can see that we are trying to link various, जहाँ पे excess है वहाँ से हम transfer और divert कर रहे हैं पानी को to जहाँ पे कम है. So through this, floods can be controlled, drought can be controlled, we can have better irrigation, and there are a lot of benefits. So that is how we read about, or we interlink current affairs, right? So there are these Himalayan components and the peninsula components. So the 13 national waterways which are now operational. So you can see it is Bhagirathi, Ganga, Amba. There are so many, and you need to remember these names as much as possible. The links and the lengths might not be important. You need to remember the longest, right? You need to remember the longest, and then you need to remember the shortest. That's it. The longest and the shortest will do. So the rivers demarcated the political and cultural boundaries as well. The relevance that we are reading now, it just not only helped in transportation, communication, trade and commerce, or for transporting people and goods, etc., but it also helped in demarcation of political and cultural boundaries. So eastern parts of India, Indian peninsula had Kalinga. You can see Indian eastern part had Kalinga covering Odisha, and it was between Mahanadi and Godavari. In Andhra Pradesh, we see that it was basically Godavari and Krishna. And then it was the deltaic plain which was formed by Godavari and Krishna became very prominent with towns, right? So during this, we can see Satavahanas and successors. So major parts of Tamil Nadu was between Krishna and Kaveri. So you need to remember all of this, because somehow it is very crucial. If you ever get a question for like match the following or so on, you can be able to answer. So eastern part we see Mahanadi and Godavari. Andhra Pradesh, then we see Godavari Krishna. Then we see Tamil Nadu is Krishna Kaveri, right? So Kaveri Valley becomes the seat of Chola power. You can see Godavari and Krishna was Satavahanas. Then Krishna Kaveri was basically Chola power, right? And then you see eastern part was bounded by the Coromandel coast. So eastern ghats or steppes not very high with openings for easy communications with other parts of Andhra and Tamil Nadu, right? So the port cities, which are the port cities? This is very important. The port cities were Arikamedu, Mahabalipuram and Kaveri Pattanam. They were situated in the Coromandel coast. So the western parts of the peninsula does not have clear regional units. So you can see eastern part is well defined, but the western part is not. Fine. So Maharashtra is located between Tapi and Bhima. This is important. Maharashtra is between Tapi and Bhima. Karnataka is located between Bhima, upper region of Krishna, and Tungabhadra. Tungabhadra further serves as a natural frontier between the warring powers. Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, Pallavas, Cholas face difficulty extending their authority beyond Tungabhadra, right? So you can see why it acts as a, why it is a natural frontier. It is because the Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, Pallavas, and the Cholas, they all had difficulty extending their authority beyond Tungabhadra. So, coastal areas in southwest is covered by the modern states of Kerala, and you can see that the western coasts are called as Malabar coast. So the communication between the coasts and neighboring areas of Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Kerala were very limited. And why it was limited? Because of the Western Ghats, as it is very difficult to pass or to cross these areas. Right? So, two important things you can see, that why it is difficult to cross, because of the geography or the geomorphology, and why you can see why it is called Tungabhadra, and this area is called as Tungabhadra is known as natural frontier, because the Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, and Pallavas, Cholas, they could not extend their authority beyond Tungabhadra. So the land between Indus and Gangetic systems and the Vindhya mountains is further divided into two units by the Aravali mountain. There is this west of Aravali is covered by Thar desert, which are the parts of Rajasthan. The desert made human settlement impossible, right? So deserts were crossable on camels. Southeastern portion of Rajasthan was comparatively more fertile. If you go towards the Thar desert, it is very dry and very humid, very hot. It is not very fertile. But in the southeastern portions, it is quite fertile. It is comparatively better. So there is existence of Khetri copper mines, which led to the settlement of Chalcolithic period. Now Rajasthan transition into the fertile plains of Gujarat. So you getting it? We are traveling. We are just traveling all over. So the plains are irrigated by Narmada, Tapi. If you can see, this is by Narmada, Tapi, Mahi, Sabarmati rivers, and Gujarat is located at the end of the northwestern part of the Deccan Plateau, right? So in the Deccan Plateau, you can see that Gujarat is situated in the northwestern part. The state includes less rainy Kathiawar Peninsula, and the coastal areas of Gujarat, they are suitable for setting up harbors. So the Gujarat area is, or the coastal area of Gujarat is better for setting up harbors. And a lot of foreign trade takes place. So people of Gujarat are very much known for their enterprising traders. They are basically the enterprising traders. You can see here the water bodies and the settlement, right? You can see the water bodies and the settlement here, right? You can see that again there was an MOU signed for world class historical site showcasing India's rich maritime history, which includes National Maritime Museum, Maritime Heritage based theme parks, Maritime Research Institute, National Conservation Parks. So, this is an important piece of information. MOU for development of NMHC at Lothal, Gujarat. Right? So, south of the Ganga Yamuna Doab and are bounded by the Chambal River, Son River, and the Vindhya Mountains and Narmada River. Right? So, you have to remember, because map based questions काफी आते हैं. So, south of Ganga Yamuna Doab का क्या है? It is bounded by Chambal, Son, Vindhya Mountains, and Narmada River in the state of Madhya Pradesh. And the northern part consists of very fertile plains. Largest state in the country is definitely Madhya Pradesh. So they are divided into two parts, that is the eastern and the western. Eastern part basically is covered by the Vindhyas, and it is very important. eastern part is Vindhyas, and it is very important. It was very important in Gupta times. And the western MP is the Malwa, right? So Malwa has been a historical site since the 6th century BC, and it served as an important land for the Gujarat ports. So wars were fought between the Deccan and the northern powers for possession of Malwa and Gujarat. The Shakas and the Satavahanas, they all fought for the position, right? And the Marathas and Rajputs also fought for this. So this area is so important because it is rich, and it is rich in the resources. It was large. It was the largest state in the country. That is why it was divided into eastern and the western part. So each part was having its own relevance during various dynasties, just like eastern part was important during Gupta period, and then you can see a lot of wars were fought for having possession of Malwa and Gujarat. The natural frontiers and the cultural contract. So, if we see the areas in India were divided by the rivers, mountains, and deltas, there were different ruling dynasties which rose and fell in these regions. The communication was very difficult, and the natural frontiers were hard to conquer, making it difficult for the ruling class to control all regions. Right? So, as you can see, because just now we saw that Tungabhadra was a natural frontier, so this is an example for that. Each region became a distinct cultural unit with its own style of life and language. As you can see, every place, every state is having its own distinct culture. When we were reading in the first chapter about unity in diversity, we have covered this section in depth, in details, very well, that how despite being so diverse, we all are united. So, in northern and eastern India, most languages were derived from the Indo Aryan stock and had many elements in common. So, Sanskrit was cultivated and understood throughout India. And the repository of the Sanskrit manuscripts was Nepal, and I want you all to kindly write it down in the comment section below. We have just completed now. So pause करके प्लीज पॉज करके आंसर जरूर दीजिएगा. Now the Vindhyas mountains, they cut across India and west to eastern parts, and they formed a boundary between the south and the north India. So the speakers of Dravidian language, they lived in the south, right, of Vindhyas, and the Indo Aryans, they lived in the north. So there was this north south division, and the languages were different, the cultures were different. The Vindhya did not act as a barrier, and ancient people moved from north to south and vice versa. So it never acted as a barrier, despite having these cultural exchange, these what should I say? Like they had different language, different culture. It never acted as a barrier. Rather, there was cultural exchange of language and culture between North and South. The need for metals and other resources made the various people to connect well, and for trade and commerce, so which used to flourish in the ancient times. If we see about the minerals and other resources, we see that exploitation of natural resources in India has significant impact on its history. So, Indian plains had abundant forested areas before the human settlement developed. जब रोड्स एंड रेलवेज का कंस्ट्रक्शन होने का शुरुआत हुआ, the first thing was clearing up of the forests. So previously, if we see in the ancient times, we see that forests were abundant. Forest provided game. They, we have food, fuel, and there was fodder, and everything was there. There was timber. Early human settlements found in the hilly areas and river valleys between the hills, they were all there. Timber houses were there, and we see that stones were used for construction, for tool making, for various kind of purposes. Now more temples and sculptures were there. So we see that temples and sculptures made up of stone in Deccan and the South Indian areas, which we can still see now. It stands strong, and it speaks its own stories. So the copper is abundant in India. You see that in the Chota Nagpur plateau, particularly in the Singhbhum district, which is the richest copper mine, right? And you can see that we have in ancient times also, we can see various kind of copper, you know, uh, sculptures, etc. So the copper tools were found in Bihar, in the parts of MP. They were used by the ancient people. Now, the rich copper deposits are also called, or they were also found in the Khetri mines in Rajasthan. So, these mines were used by the pre Vedic and the Vedic people who used these mines. You can basically see that it is the pre Vedic and the Vedic people, and basically they covered Pakistan, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Ganga Yamuna, Do. Now, numerous copper belts found in Khetri zone can be dated back to before 1000 BC, right? And copper is basically considered as pure. You can say that it is very pure by the Hindus. So, it is always used in the rituals, in the religious rituals. Puja Pat may we always see that copper is used. Now, India did not produce tin in ancient times, and available tin was very scarce. So, tin deposits were basically found in Rajasthan, right? Just like copper deposits, you can see that copper was there abundant in India, tin was scarce. And if you see that tin deposits were found in Rajasthan, MP, Bihar, but they all were exhausted. So, lack of tin resulted in the use of, it started um, people started using bronze in prehistoric times. So Harappan civilization was the one where you can see a lot, they procured some tin from Rajasthan and mainly from Afghanistan. So you can see again trade and commerce here, trade and commerce through mineral resources. And Harappan started because there was no tin was available or very less scarce. There was scarcity of tin, so they started using the bronze tools, which were limited in number and had very lower percentage of tin in it. So India did not have a proper bronze age. Now connections, if so, this can be also a question. This can be a question if you see that why India did not have a proper bronze age. Why India did not have a proper Bronze Age? Because even in the Harappan bronze tools were limited in numbers and had very less percentage of tin. So the connections with Myanmar and Malay Peninsula made use of bronze possible for making the statue of gods in South India. Tin from Bihar, bronze of Pala times were obtained from Gaya, Hazaribagh, and Ranchi. Now, tin ores were smelted in Hazaribagh till the middle of last century, right? So, tin from where we get, you get to know from this that it was from basically Gaya, Hazaribagh, and Ranchi, and smelting कहाँ पे होता था of tin ores? It was in Hazaribagh. So, India has rich iron ore deposits in South Bihar, Eastern MP, and Karnataka, and the discovery of smelting using this was used for the use of iron for war and agriculture. Now, the availability of iron played a very significant role where in the empire of Magad. So Avanti with its capital as Ujjain become very important kingdom in the 6th and the 5th century BC because there was large scale use of iron. The Satavahanas and the other dynasties south of the Vindhyas may have exploited iron ore in Andhra and Karnataka, but it is not assured, right? It is not assured. But you can see that Avanti with its capital as Ujjain was very important kingdom just for the use of this one thing, that was iron. And iron was very rich, or you can say you can find it in abundance in South Bihar, Eastern MP, and Karnataka. So Andhra possesses large lead resources. So what did Andhra had? Andhra had this lead resources, right? So which explains the abundance of lead coins during the period of Satavahanas. So lead was again obtained from Rajasthan, and the earliest coins were all punch marked coins, and they were mostly of silver, but they were rarely found in India. They existed in Kharagpur Hills, and this account for the use of silver in the earliest punch marked coins found in Bihar. Punch marked coins were basically found in Bihar. You can get this account from. You can see these are the lead coins, punch marked coins. So the gold dust was carried by river streams from Himalayas, right? So they all were collected from the river channel deposits in plains. So you can see that the Kolar goldfield in Karnataka contains gold, and you can find that the traces of gold were found in 1800 BC in the Stone Age site in Karnataka. So there was no exploitation until the 2nd century AD, and the Kolar considered as the earliest capital of the Gangas in South Karnataka, right? So there was this gold used in early times were obtained from the Central Asia and the Roman Empire. So where from we got the gold? Gold was basically obtained from the Central Asia and the Roman Empire. Now, the local resources were very insufficient to maintain the gold currencies, and India produced variety of precious stones during those days. So we are now reading about the relevance of minerals and resources. Just like you can see that precious stones were there. So in central India, Odisha and South India, you were getting all kind of precious stones. The precious stones were further traded, and it brought further prosperity to the country. So that was all about today's class. So in this video, I hope you can get to know that how geography plays important role in history, how monsoon is important, how the tectonic movements are important, how resources are important, how minerals are important. Then we saw these all are related to the kingdoms and the dynasties. So that was all for today's class. Hope to see you soon again with yet another new lecture. Thank you.